Stephen,
Andrew.
do you fancy spending a quiet night inside number 9?
Of course I do.
Great. So here we are, the now traditional series wrap-up episode at the end of series 6. We've been through it twice. And yeah, this is a kind of chance to, I guess, reflect on the series as a whole, maybe think about our favorite episodes generally, have a look at some of the things we've been receiving from listeners, and yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, there was quite a few sort of general emails that we received from people enjoying the show, which was, again, really lovely to receive and encouraging through. Yeah, I don't know how you found sort of doing a new series, and so like rather than obviously up until series 6 we've been able to take quite a measured approach to things and just
I felt like this has been a really different experience doing this series, and I was thinking today about whether it's because the series itself was quite different and the tone of the series itself was quite different in a lot of places, or whether it was just the experience of them all being so fresh and it being all very recent. And obviously we then tie that in with us picking up new listeners and things and having new people talking to us and all those kind of things. And this did feel like a very different thing over the past sort of 12 weeks or so.
Yeah, thinking back to like Wuthering Heist first showing, feels like a very long time ago now.
It does. And like I say, I'm not sure whether the show changed. I don't think it did, or whether just our kind of environment of doing this podcast changed a bit, that made it just feel a bit different.
Yeah, for me, it's felt a little bit more immediate and yeah, kind of like I guess urgent in some ways, which has been strange. And I think we'll have to sort of reflect it, like for the next series, think about has this been the experience that we want with Inside Number 9? Have we been, I don't know, I feel like maybe I would like a slower attack at it and to enjoy it before
possibly I think that's the thing, is that I know that we've recorded all of these episodes of this podcast up to this point from the point of view of someone who has just seen it for the first time, and that's kind of how we're reacting to it. But in reality, every single one of those episodes we've seen once, twice, 3, 4 times, and we've kind of been able to ruminate on them, think about how they fit in with the sort of the wider picture of everything that's happened so far that we've seen before as well. And like I say, that's why I'm still trying to figure out where this series fits in with everything so far, the other 5 series before this one. It's
a good question. Like how much of our subjective experience of the series is sort of clouding or like influencing our view of where that fits in comparison to other series, or is this a different series? Does it feel different? Or
I think I'm a different viewer. I think that by doing this for the last 18 months or so, I'm now coming to watch Inside Number 9 from a completely different point of view and a completely different place than I ever did originally. Which, you're right. I don't know what that does to my sort of viewing experience and the way that I now look at it and the way I now watch it, and whether that does impact on, even whether that impacts on how we then sort of think about it and then discuss it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, really interesting. So we had, of all the episodes, we probably had the most correspondence about Last Night at the Proms. I think that is the episode that provoked the most, probably the extreme reactions at both ends. So maybe we'll get into that like in a little bit. We'll talk about probably our favorite episodes, like have a think about, what you enjoyed most. there was an email from Dan who said, inspired by your chat recently about the first episode you would choose to show an Inside Number 9 newbie. I've considered what my choice would be. This is quite interesting. I'd love to get kind of more thoughts on this from different people, because I think definitely. Everybody seems to have different approaches to how they'd introduce people to the show. So Dan said, I thought the criteria would be 1, a very good episode, but not a brilliant one, something lurking just on the fringes of a top 10 perhaps. But we want to start with something too brilliant and leave them feeling everything afterwards was not as good, which that's fair enough. But again, it's like brilliant is sort of subjective, isn't it? It's like, what are there, because even, I mean, it's generally accepted that 12 Days of Christine is a brilliant episode, but there are people, maybe they're just contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, I don't know. But there are people who say, I don't know what all the fuss is about with that. I don't like it. Which is fair enough, as we've said many times.
It is, but there's a certain level of subjectivity there that I don't think is appropriate. That's objectively an incredible piece of television.
Well, I think that's fair. Like, it's objectively great. You might not enjoy it, but it's objectively brilliant. Yeah.
I think, but we spoke a lot about that whilst talking about last night, didn't we? And last night, the proms provoked discussion both in terms of the content and the way the episode played out as a piece of storytelling as well. I think it split people in both of those respects.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the Brexit stuff. It was also, was I missing something?
Yes.
Didn't quite land.
Yeah. 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 So Dan's second episode would be a twist episode. Definitely. Which I think that's good. Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that there's actually a separate thing there for a twist episode. So we've spoken a lot about it before, that they all get lumped in as like twist episodes. Where's the twist?
Yeah.
When's it coming? What is
Inside Number 9 always has great twists.
Yeah, well, in reality, that's not necessarily the case. And sometimes it's just wonderful storytelling. And it's nice to sort of separate that out as a little category.
Yeah, definitely. Third would be a genuinely funny one. I wonder what sort of constitutes a genuinely funny one.
It always does puzzle me a bit seeing this build as like a darkly comic anthology thing, when so many of them, they have little moments that are funny and brilliantly hilarious, but I wouldn't necessarily wrap this up as comedy.
No, that's true. Yeah, maybe that. Do you think that we could use this to frame Series 6? He's got 5. So a genuinely funny one. 4th is a genuinely dark one. 5, one that feels very claustrophobic. He says the writers have talked a lot about this being one of their inspirations after all, which, I mean, we've picked up on that, haven't we, many times?
Oh, definitely.
And it's usually the first episode of many of the series, like the Sardines, Lancashire. I've lost everything else. Referee's a winner. Yes, indeed. And Dan says for those reasons I'd probably start with Sardines. Wait, that's claustrophobic.
That is a claustrophobic.
For an added bonus, it's the first episode of Series 1, of course. I think Sardines is a good one to start with, to be honest. Even though, like, when you really, I don't think the darkness of the subject matter is immediately as forefront in your mind as it
enough
no.
to go, oh great, you're showing me a program about child abuse. Thanks for that. Probably
it's only when you reflect on it, like, no, that was pretty horrific, actually.
No, you're right. No, that works.
And then he says Lancashire would come close as well for all the above reasons. They're both the claustrophobic ones, so 1 and 5. But if we were to look at Series 6 through those
that's a good call.
Lenses, a very good episode, but not a brilliant one. What would you say in Series 6? What would you start people with?
If I just had the episodes in Series 6 to start with, I had to pick an order 6. To show them to someone.
Someone's never watched Inside Number 9 before. This is their entry series.
Possibly lip service. Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it hits a lot of the right sort of characterizations and key things in terms of claustrophobic, in terms of a clever twist,
yeah.
In terms of some comic relief. It's an episode that for me sums up quite a lot of what I enjoy about Inside Number 9 and has one of the sort of the possibly most sort of densely packed kind of ability to pull it apart and see what's going on in there. And like I say, that's now coming to this program as someone who has sat and picked it apart for hours on end over the last year or so. So again, I don't know whether that's giving me a different way of thinking about what I want people to see.
Yeah.
So possibly lip service.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair shout. Yeah, just that the whole thing of a very good episode, but not a brilliant one.
It is brilliant, though. That's the one thing. But I don't.
But I was reflecting on this earlier, and I know when we did the sort of revisit, I was umming and ahhing about it as an episode on first viewing is totally brilliant, in my view. Like when I first watched it, I was like, "That's genius."
Super. Yeah.
On second viewing, it was like, I think there are holes here. There are like, this doesn't quite fit. And then on further viewing beyond that, I was like, no, actually, I think this is really brilliant. So I find a weird journey through the viewings.
I don't think it's too brilliant. I don't think it's enough to disappoint someone.
No.
Coming to this, that they're then going to sort of see the next episode of whatever you put in front of them, they go, oh, because I think over the course of all of the episodes that have ever been produced, you can find ones that are better.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess leads a little bit into where we kind of see this series fitting in with the rest of them in terms of quality. I mean, I don't like ranking massively, but I think that's a fair kind of conversation to have.
I think this is a good way to frame the ranking conversation as well, because it's like I think we want people to watch Inside Number 9. So it's almost ranking through different criteria as well of like, where would you start someone? What would be the twist episodes that you'd point people towards?
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's like I don't think I have a favorite. Depends what I'm in the mood for. It's much like that conversation of what's your favorite album or what's your favorite thing to drink. Like it really honestly depends on what time of day it is, what season it is, what the weather's like. It really depends on what I'm in the mood for when I sit down to watch an episode.
Yeah.
I mean, I introduced my parents with Christine. I just went all in and went, right, let's put something in front of them that they almost can't ignore as a bang, right, this is this series. They hadn't seen it before. They wanted to know what I was spending my time on the internet talking about. And so I just went all in on that. And then, that's my other podcast. And then, sorry, there is another one. And then from there, I was like, well, they're fans of Blackadder, so let's watch Elizabeth Gadge. And that's the other thing, I think, is that when you're introducing this program to someone, there is enough variety that you can play to things that you know that they will enjoy based on what else they like.
Yeah.
And once you've got a little bit.
We were just having a conversation before we started recording about, so I've just been sort of watching Ghosts, and a lot of, there's a lot of crossover. Well, actually, there's a lot of crossover between Ghosts and a few episodes of Inside Number 9. You've got a few of those actors appearing, but Elizabeth Gadge is one with a very obvious crossover. And so if you were a fan of Ghosts, I'd probably point you towards that. Point you towards one with a familiar actor. And so you're almost, you feel like you're in safe hands or familiar hands with even Diddle Diddle Dumpling. So you've got Matthew Bainton in that, who's in Ghosts, and it's like, okay, there are.
Oh, he's in that.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Derek Jacobi. Well, have I got the episode for you?
So a twist episode. Obviously, lip service is now taken. That's we're starting with lip service.
So I can't duplicate.
You maybe need to think about what you like.
Can I rejig things as we go through this?
I don't know. Are we that sort of podcast? I think sort of make a decision and we stick with it.
That's the thing about us. We really never go off on a tangent or anything. We really just stick to our guns on everything.
Very rigid.
What are our episodes and the twists? So, Wuthering Heist. The twist is that the Doctor was in the relationship, I guess.
There's the twist it wears on its sleeve, which is, what's her name? Being cop.
Columbina, being the
which is not a twist, really. It's like it's almost
narrative device, really.
Yeah, which it wears at the forefront of it as like you'll never believe what's.
This is just part of the story, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And then Doc obviously being the one having the free song, whatever it is.
So I think that Wuthering Heist is my funny one. Comedy wise, I think I laughed out loud most watching that one.
Okay.
Purely because it was just so ridiculous. And the jokes were, I know you said you weren't sure whether you enjoyed those jokes, but it turned out, no, you absolutely did enjoy those.
Too close to the bone.
Yeah, they were, it was brilliant. So I think that's my comedy one, really. Episode 2 was
Simon Says. So there's twists in that.
That's a twisty-turny one, isn't it? And they are good twists. The twist essentially being the staged murder. And then the second stage murder as well. They really go for doubling up on that same twist.
How do you plead? So it's whether, for me, I'm feeling, well, actually, so how do you plead and Last Night of the Proms for dark, but also Last Night of the Proms for claustrophobic feels, I don't know, there's something quite claustrophobic about that setting for Last Night of the Proms, but
yes,
maybe we'll get onto that. Is there a twist? No, Last Night of the Proms isn't twisty.
I don't think you can put an episode that has Satan as the main antagonist as anything other than the darkest one.
Do you reckon?
Really, it's pretty dark. Although, is it? Because I guess there's almost sort of like a certain level of like cartoonish aspect to.
Well, that's exactly
being the devil with his
because it's a supernatural twist. It feels like not. So it's not. I wouldn't consider it a twist in the same respect as lip service because it is because of the supernatural.
I was thinking more from like a dark point of view.
Does
the supernatural kind of aspect in the way it was done make it less dark?
Okay, right.
The idea of hell and Satan, yes, is very dark, but is there almost like
by scientists?
I think it's a controversial one, isn't it? They're on the fence. Let's put it that way. Disputed by science.
Yeah. Oh man. So
I think last night is dark. I think when you have someone murder with a pitchfork in a house, and that body is then disposed of and wrapped in a Union Jack whilst Jerusalem plays, I think that's dark.
That counts as dark.
I think that's dark. Yeah. I think that might be the dark one.
Okay, so a twist episode. See, I think we've committed to lip service too early.
Where are you putting lip service then? Claustrophobia?
Twist.
We're going to twist on that one. So need to pick a different one potentially for ones that you would introduce.
A very good episode, but not a brilliant one. So okay, I just need to
that actually works for How Do You Plead?
What, a very good episode, but not a brilliant one?
One that you could introduce people with.
Yeah. What about Simon Says? Is that too...
Oh, because we just freed that up by not using the twist from that one. It's quite intense.
Yeah. And a bit too... not self-referential, but like
I know
industry referent.
Yeah.
Referential? Is that even a word?
That is a thing, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Have that.
Cheers, man. I don't know. Maybe I'll start with some. No, I'm not sure that's where you want to start. This is difficult.
You've made it very difficult by not allowing duplicates.
Yeah, but you can't. If people are like watching a series, we're like, why are you showing me that again? Well, because this is the dark one. Yeah, but I know how I've seen it before. Dan. We've tied ourselves up in knots thanks to some self-inflicted template.
Okay. So, what are we fairly fixed in on? Are you happy with funny one being Wuthering Heist?
Yeah, let's lock that in.
Locked in. Dark, Last Night.
Yeah, okay.
Versus what? What's making you hesitate?
Well, I just want to put that as claustrophobic to some degree, but
they go into other bits of the house.
No, I know. It's more the feel of the house. But no. Let's go Dark, Last Night.
But what's more claustrophobic?
Probably Hurry Up and Wait in the caravan.
Oh yeah, yes. Good.
So
happy with that.
That goes
Dark.
Dark.
Not as dark.
What have we got left?
Last Night we've currently got in as Dark. I'm now questioning Hurry Up and Wait. Or does Skelly Hand 2B movie to be dark?
Yeah, I don't count Hurry Up and Wait as dark.
Okay, so that's claustrophobic. Definitely claustrophobic. Good shout.
Yeah.
Leaving us with good but not great. Twist, you want to go lip service?
Lip service for Twist. Funny one, Wuthering Heist. Have we decided a dark one? Or is that what
Last Night at the Proms.
Last Night at the Proms. Claustrophobic, Hurry Up and Wait. And so that means... What do we do for the good but not brilliant?
We haven't got one. That's now has to be How Do You Plead?
But there's 6 episodes.
Oh, you've only got 5 categories.
Yeah. So there's a spare one to just chuck in at the end. What have we missed? Simon Says.
We haven't used Simon Says yet.
And How Do You Plead?
Simon Says and How Do You Plead?
So out of those 2, which ones would you start with?
To give someone first, out of those 2, I think probably How Do You Plead?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right that Simon Says is a bit too focused on the industry and fan-made podcasts.
Maybe we'll just sort of not show that one at all.
Yes. So what are you showing me? It's this program that I make a podcast about. Here's the first episode that I'm going to show you about it.
Is that because it's about you?
I hate podcasts, my fans.
Yeah, okay. So Simon Says comes last, or wherever.
Wherever, it doesn't matter. Doesn't fit.
Yeah, Dan hasn't given us a 6th category, so...
Dan, get back to us if you want to create a category that Simon Says fits neatly into. I guess there is actually a category there, which is like a...
industry.
Reflecting the industry one. That does happen quite a lot. So we've created one that fits perfectly, yet also is a recurring theme.
Yeah. And interesting,
Perfect.
This series has a few of those. So again, and this is interesting, actually, even this conversation about which one is the most of this. So actually, they all have a little bit of each of these categories, but there is, I don't know, that on the whole, one does stick out more than the others for each one.
I think they kind of set out their stall in Series 1, didn't they? In Series 1, almost set that template.
You had all of it
up.
Yeah.
And it's
claustrophobic.
Yeah, and I don't know whether that is something they've kind of consciously decided to write towards, or whether it's just something that happens, that when they write, they they want to balance the series out, and when they're writing them, they kind of think, well, okay, we need one like this, one like this, one like this. I guess there are certain categories that don't crop up in this that we have seen before, like Middle England household kind of thing. We haven't really had one of those. I guess there's a bit of that in Hurry Up and Wait, but it's not really particularly typical. Last Night, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right, that is there.
Yeah, but it's...
Yeah, I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because it's almost like there's more nuanced crossover.
Yeah, because like, if you looked at Series 1 and did this with Series 1, then we're going the harrowing. Is that Series 1? Or was that Series 2?
Yeah.
I'm confused now. That was Series 1.
I think you've got them quite... So you've got the claustrophobic one, Sardines. You've got Quiet Night In, genuinely funny one. You've got, I think, The Twist, Tom and Jerry. Last Gasp would be the Middle England.
We've created a new category that Dan didn't throw us.
Yeah, but I think that is a category. I think that is something that crops up enough. The kind of England suburban.
Yeah.
On the surface, everything's great. On just beneath the surface, everything's very dark. The horror is the harrowing. And then what is it's the understudy, which is the industry one.
I think if you compare the darkness in the first series, the harrowing, and the second series would be Seance Time, which is pretty dark. Series 3, Devil of Christmas, they're all quite obviously the dark one. And it's kind of the horror tropes that are used in those that make them the dark ones. Mm-hmm. In this series, that's definitely not the case.
Stakeout.
Yeah, exactly. It's all pretty obvious. I guess horror. Series 4. Oh yeah, Tempting Fate. That's pretty obvious. But this is different. Series 6, their darkest one we've got is one that doesn't really draw upon any horror tropes at all, and is actually more horrifying when it is about what the Middle England family are capable of, potentially.
Yeah.
And that's weird.
Yeah, it's not a horror episode in terms of the fact that you're anticipating or you're on the edge of your seat wondering, okay, like this feels like a horror thing. It turns into a horror by virtue of what happens as a
normal people's behavior.
Pitchfork, from an old man. Yeah, that's really interesting. And this is why I'm really interested to view Series 6 and Series 7 together, because they've talked about the fact that they've all written them together, and they didn't know what was good. Like Wuthering Heist, was it going to be on Series 6 or Series 7? So, is there going to be a semi-imbalance there? Like,
is this like a Kid A amnesiac thing?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, it's like apparently two sides of the same coin, but actually it's all one. Like it all feels like this could all be one coin.
Yeah, I do wonder whether we're going to have a couple of episodes in this one that are more straightforward, straight up horror, because there is a remarkable lack of horror in this series for Reese. Reese loves horror films. Reese kind of oozes horror when he's writing, and he almost can't help himself, I don't think, in terms of those episodes. And to have had an episode that didn't really have that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Simon Says is pretty dark as well, I guess. But again, it's the behavior,
dark, doesn't it?
It turns dark, and it's the horror of just normal people.
Humans being weird.
Yeah. I guess the most obvious horror one would probably be How Do You Plead?
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I guess it doesn't come across quite like that, because it's more of a legal episode, isn't it, more than anything?
Well, in some ways it's not dissimilar, because it's essentially an argument that stitches someone up at the end. Like, it's not...
Hell is kind of not consequential. It's not.
No, it's just like who loses. It is essentially like it is a law thing, because it's like the judge at the end of the episode is Satan.
Yeah.
And whether he's a judge in a courtroom or Satan in a lift doesn't really matter.
No, exactly.
Like, actually, the argument is that, as you say, it's inconsequential where you end up. It's prison or hell.
Or hell.
Yeah. Interesting. And I was struck, and I think I hadn't noticed as we were recording it, but like I referred to Reese's characters in like the parallels with the Wicker Man a couple of times.
Right. Okay.
Which I hadn't quite appreciated. So in Hurry Up and Wait, you've obviously got him dressed as the policeman investigating something. And there's a Sergeant Howie element to his innocence and all of that stuff. And then also in How Do You Plead, it's the fact that he is the target. He's the innocent target that's been deliberately brought into this situation as a sacrifice for someone else. Right? And yeah, in reference to Reese's love of the Wicker Man and his pilgrimage to wherever he goes.
Midsummer Isle. Samurai. Yeah. But that I guess is interesting in the fact that either consciously or subconsciously, there's kind of a weaving through of certain aspects of an all-out horror film in a series where there is no obvious all-out horror episode.
Yeah.
So he snuck it in there somehow.
Just keeps cropping up. Yeah. Cropping. The crop failed famously.
Don't you start.
So yeah, other emails. Kath emailed to say, listened in the gym this morning. So glad you guys are rewatching. Just started from the beginning again. I think my top 3 are Cold Comfort, Misdirection, and Bernie Clifton's Dressing Room.
Can I just say,
amazing also. Yeah.
I'm really happy that people find that we give them the drive to go on in the gym. Because if I was picking things to listen to when I go out for a run to kind of keep pushing me forward, this would not be it.
No?
No.
Well, if there's anyone running right now listening to this,
tell us.
You're doing
Love
a great.
To hear
you keep going.
Keep going.
Keep breathing.
Anyone who's listening to this, please keep breathing.
Yeah, actually,
keep breathing.
That applies to everyone. Yeah. There was a good. So UD Keys sent an email before we get on to the last night of the prom stuff, because I think that's probably where we need to wind it up. Simon said, UD Keys email about Simon says, thanks for this. I really like this deep dive kind of analysis because I'm a natural overthinker and I do this for every episode of Inside Number 9. The part that doesn't ring true for me in this episode is why Simon would carry out his audition in this manner. How would Spencer realize it was an audition when Simon wasn't using any of the dialogue from the script that they had just written together? From Spencer's perspective, Simon had just killed his own friend, blackmailed him again, and finally seems to be preparing to sexually assault him. It wasn't going to end well. Perhaps Simon is so delusional about his relationship with Spencer that he thinks he will accept his advances. I always had the impression that Simon was after a sexual relationship with Spencer. Besides the fact that he finds the homosexual relationship between the fictional characters in the show much more satisfying, I think he also fetishizes Spencer as the creator of the world that he is obsessed with. Overall, I enjoyed this episode as I think it is an interesting look at the dynamic between fans and creators. Oh, and I was also a bit confused about the blood that kept appearing at the beginning. It did seem that it might have been a trick of Spencer's mind. Maybe he just had a bunch of that fake blood stuck to the bottom of his shoes. That's in reference to what we discussed. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the whole audition.
It is, yeah. I think it's a fair point, and that there might be a sort of a little bit of a mini hole or a misstep there. But I think it's worth considering quite how sort of unhinged the Simon character is. that you can imagine that in his own mind, this is a genius idea, and he hasn't really potentially thought about the fact that it might come off in a slightly different way. What do you mean he wouldn't understand? Of course he would. Of course Spencer would realise that I'm doing an audition. How would he not? I'm one of his characters. I think he's unhinged enough to think that he's playing that as an audition. And has no reason to think otherwise.
It's almost similar to what we were saying about, and it comes up, doesn't it, with when he asks about, like, when he looks up, what was it, getting out of the lake or whatever, what's he thinking? And that whole sense of they're so involved with the show that they just assume that Spencer would know exactly what he's referring to. Like we were saying about the Friends, that thing with the Friends reunion, of realizing that those people involved with making Friends, so to speak, don't have any recollection of massive quantities.
No, that's true. I saw something with Steve Carell talking about when he was on The Office, and these Office mega fans that would be able to quote back all these lines and all these amazing things that happened in the show that had really struck a chord with them, and they'd seen over and over again. He was like, I haven't watched this back. I haven't sat and watched all 9 series of this 4 times. I delivered the lines. The only time I've seen it is when I've watched it with you, with these guys, when we just watched it back to see how it had come out. You're saying these things to me, but I don't really know what you're talking about.
And that is, I think, of all the things to come out of Simon Says, I think that is the most, I find that like almost the most hauntingly empty and sad thing that is obviously understandable and true, but like this disconnect between those who really invest themselves and their enjoyment and like massive parts of their lives into these things that they believe like these people have the same kind of level of investment in it as well. Yeah. And I guess, I mean, you like the crossovers like with Stephen Rees as both creators and actors within these shows, like they would have a little bit more of the
definitely
deep investment. But even still, like that's what I find really interesting about listening to the Inside Number 9 podcast, of like, actually I think we probably read more into some of the things.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that we do. I'm sure we do a GCSE poetry. Why was the room blue? Well, the room was just blue. That kind of thing. Sometimes I imagine we do. In fact, I have no doubt.
No, and that's what makes it brilliant. And so if you've got that, if you've got a level of understanding and appreciation for the fact that actually, I always think art is sort of 75% creation. This is random percentages, but like, and say 25% interpretation. And
actually 70-30, but that's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But like, either way, what you bring to it as a fan, as an audience, as a listener, as a viewer, whatever, is just as important as what comes through the creation. But you've also got to have an appreciation that is going to be different. It's going to be, it makes up this whole. And if you're searching for reasons for things, you're probably going to be disappointed if you speak to the creators.
Yeah.
What makes it beautiful from your perspective isn't going to be answered by the creators.
and that's the thing, is that I imagine I guess you can romanticize these things. Right? Every single one of these 6 episodes in this series is their baby, and they have created it. They've brought it up. They've developed it. They've got it to this stage until they're happy to release it out into the world. When in reality, each of these episodes is 1/6 of a chunk of work that was done over the course of a year and a half or so, and then released.
Yeah.
And that's a big old amount of work that's gone into that to get these things out there, and each of those represents very little as a percentage. Each of them is just half hour of a 3-hour thing that went out. And so for them to maybe even considered them in as much detail as you do while you're watching them for the 5th time, they probably didn't.
Yeah, and to consider every detail from your perspective as well. That
kind of comes back to the new perspective that we've got when we're watching this. And we're now watching this as those people that are looking further, because that's our content and that's what we're doing, and that's what people have said they enjoy listening to, is us doing exactly that. But yeah, we are sometimes reading things into this that are coming from us.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Like, I think that's part of it, as I'm saying. Like,
definitely,
that actually adds to it. And so those sorts of conversations can be, that sort of augment the enjoyment of the thing. But just as long as you don't pin your hopes on going and speaking to the creators and being like, so what, please do tell me about this thing that we've got ourselves fixated on as a important point. It's like, well, that didn't mean anything to us when we created it.
And I think what that episode also says to us is that, like, the kind of the toxic element of that, where you pin your own interpretation of what's going on to the extent that you then build up an expectation of how you then see that playing out, is then a problem. Because if it wasn't thought of in the first place, why should it become a consideration for later narrative bits? Like, well, you decided that that's what we were thinking at that point, and so you can't then use that as a reason why later on this was shit. That's on you. That is literally on you.
You've set yourself up for your own disappointment.
Yeah, you have, exactly. Yeah. In which case, in future, just watch it mindlessly. Don't think too much about it. You won't be disappointed.
Quite. Oh, good. Right. So let's get on to the main episode that had the bulk of the correspondence, which was last night, the proms. We have gone and rediscovered the original comments that were on YouTube. I think it's probably safer not to refer to them.
Some people just went.
Yes, we had notifications via email of everything that was posted on YouTube. Since we released that initial reaction episode, things seem to have disappeared. So we're assuming that people have taken their comments down. So we won't go back and
dox you all.
Yes, exactly. I think that would be unfair.
Good. I'm glad we've got a nailed-on sense of morality here.
But just to re-emphasize, as we said in the last episode, there was a lot of strong reactions that were very, I'd say, very firm in their belief that how they interpreted the episode was how it was intended and was true. And I think a lot of those initial reactions were fairly extreme and seen through a particular lens that maybe wasn't real. I
think we kind of addressed that kind of like context aspect to it last time when we actually did the last night the proms episode, and kind of spoke about how people have kind of maybe misinterpreted things, or why people have felt so strongly about things that if they took a second beat, which I think some people probably have since, and gone, hang on a minute, is that really what, did I see what I thought I saw?
Yeah.
I think I still stick by the fact that it didn't land with me. The episode didn't land with me purely because of, I think, just the mayhem didn't kind of tie together nicely enough and neatly enough for me to say, right, I see what you did there. It was all a bit kind of all over the shop. I could be missing something, and I'm more than happy to find out that I was completely missing something. But I think we kind of that's kind of where we arrived at, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that it was holding a mirror up to people, and people didn't really appreciate that mirror wherever they sat on any side of things.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Sam emailed to say, I really enjoyed Series 6. The twists in How Do You Plead and Lip Service were among the best in the show's history. Also loved the presentation of Wuthering Heist. However, it was the series finale, Last Night at the Proms, that made me compelled to write in. I don't know if the themes just went over my head, but I did not get this episode. I sometimes feel Stephen Reese produce content that's sole purpose is to entertain themselves. I'm fairly well educated, but the religious references paired with the prom scene were lost on me. I appreciate your points that the episode was a social commentary on the public's reactions to Brexit and our society's underlying racism. But I'm not sure that was but considering those themes were so subtle, did the episode really achieve anything? Maybe the fact that lockdown halted filming meant the message of the episode was lost. I'm sure people will argue that the morals were not subtle, but the casual viewer will have taken nothing from this episode.
I think that Jerusalem was the thing that tied the themes together, because Jerusalem was the thing that's being lauded as like a patriotic anthem that's being played at Last Night at the Proms and is on a regular basis, but also has the tie-in with the idea of Jesus coming to England.
Or Joseph.
If you want to go there. But I think that's the glue of tying the themes together. And there is more stuff going on there around identity and nationalism and all those kind of things. But I think they do tie. I don't think it's entirely disparate, just throwing themes around and seeing what sticks. I think there is something there. But I agree that there was something missing. I don't know what it was, but there was something for me that Jerusalem glue wasn't quite obvious enough for me as a viewer. But I think there might be people who go, no, done, perfect. I can see exactly what they were going for there. But was it Dan or Sam? Sam?
That was Sam, yeah.
Sam. I think I agree with Sam to a large extent there, in that something didn't feel quite right. I disagree that I think that they were kind of writing for themselves. I think that's become a bit of a running joke for them, like was being thrown out there with the fourth wall breaks in Wuthering Heist, when they were talking about it being self-indulgent and being a drama teacher's wet dream. Yeah, those sorts of things where they almost make a joke out of it becoming a self-indulgent thing. Because I think it would be very easy for them to disappear up their own asses with this program, because it could become, you could lose any lightheartedness and it could all be about twists. What's the twist? What's the incredibly clever twist? What are we going to pull on you next? And they don't. They keep it accessible. They keep it light. They keep it enjoyable. And I don't think that Last Night at the Proms was that.
No. I
don't think it was. I don't think they would I don't think they ever set out to try and outsmart.
No. I can't put my finger, I really enjoyed Last Night at the Proms in a way of, I won't watch it many times, but my experience of it, especially that first time experiencing it through headphones, it was like a sensory experience.
Yeah, a bit of an assault.
I will never forget it. There was something about it that was so powerfully emotive. And I'm not sure what it was, but it was like an experience that just felt really, really powerful.
But I think that's kind of that's almost. So based on what I've just said there about not quite landing with me in terms of how the writing and the story played out.
Yeah.
it almost falls back on the powerful imagery and the assault on the senses, I think, to some extent, because you can't watch someone being wrapped up in a Union Jack with Jerusalem playing like that without thinking, whoa, this is intense, this is big. And something doesn't quite carry through narrative wise despite that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think my experience through that, and I've talked about it, I think being about, obviously Brexit is referred to in it, but it's not about Brexit.
No.
As far as I'm concerned. And it was that kind of overwhelming, all-encompassing emotive experience of that episode through a very close sensory experience of it was about something so much more human and so much more universal. And we talked in our last episode about that, the idea of like closing in on an enemy, like when you find an enemy, then you become closer with the people that you've considered your enemy, and that kind of thing. And this sort of idea of scapegoating and all of this stuff that I think, just there are so much more universal things being spoken about that merit further watches and probably further close experiences with it. Again, like I'd love to go back and watch it again with headphones loud and to see, okay, what is it? What does this do to me again? Like when I watch it. We had a message from Simon, who's been fairly quiet, recently. Obviously, Simon from the Stakeout episode.
Simon from the Stakeout.
So he'd sent us an image of Yusuf, or an image of the St Andrew's Cross, the Scottish flag. And obviously Yusuf is set out on the diagonals. And then he's said St Andrew is the patron saint of singers and butchers, among others. So, which when
they were both singers and butchers. Mick was singing along, and then
So when I first read Simon's message, I was like, yes, that aligns perfectly. And I was like, it does, like it resonates with with that. I would be impressed if that's kind of that's a pretty niche reference. And he says also he's apparently the saint to pray to for protection against whooping cough. That's less of a convincing.
I love the amount of stuff that is in Simon's head.
Simon is brilliant, and yes, he links things together that just amazing.
I think you've used most of these episodes as a giant cryptic crossword puzzle waiting to be solved.
Indeed. Yeah. So thanks Simon for that. TCJB, I think this was a message on YouTube, said, I don't get the second stabbing. Judas betrayal perhaps, but Judas kissed Jesus to identify him but didn't stab him. Legend has it Roman soldier Longinus stabbed him on the cross. I don't get that bit at all, other than maybe it's a complete betrayal of his champagne socialist style beliefs forced into the practical reality. Not sure.
I think this is one of those episodes that you get drawn into trying to take certain aspects and impose things on them that definitely aren't there. And I think that trying to take the Christ narrative and then trying to fit that action into it perhaps doesn't make sense, but you're drawn to do it because you want the things to fit in with the thing you've decided that it should probably fit with. You can see what I mean? Yeah. Like you've decided, right, this entire thing is a parable about the guy who loved the parables. It's not all about that necessarily. I think someone replied to that with it being more just a pent up frustration with him. and him having a chance to just unleash some stuff. Perhaps some sort of almost like a self-flagellation thing of the way he was attracted to Yusuf and he didn't feel like he should be, and just getting frustrated with that, all that kind of stuff that isn't
just
really
projecting outwards
exactly.
Of the stuff that he's holding on to about himself.
Whilst also neatly demonstrating his hypocrisy around his globalist love of everyone, supposedly.
Yeah. And I think that's like my instinct is that is an episode that you have to zoom out and experience
I think so.
rather than zoom in and analyze. I think this,
So
I might be wrong
for our next run through every single episode, where instead of zooming in, we zoom out. What's inside number 9? We're going to call it outside number 9. What's the bigger picture? A macro view into the world of inside number 9.
There you go. That's our next. We're going to view the onion from the outside.
It's all papery and brown.
Always. All these episodes are papery and brown.
Oh, you're literally looking at them as though they're an onion. That one's purple. Yeah, they call it a red onion.
Yeah, why?
Why?
Let's not get into it.
You need answering.
Oh, good. Right. That's Charlotte to deal with. So I guess next we're going to get back into the script books, wherever that finished.
So we last did the bill, didn't we?
I think so.
Has that been sent out?
That's been sent out. So I think what have we got? 4 more episodes of the 3rd series through the script books.
So we've got Riddle of the Sphinx is next, isn't it?
Great.
Oh, I can go back to watching old inside number 9.
safety of.
Oh, I'm gonna feel so safe and warm.
Oh, it's gonna be lovely.
Oh,
bit of cannibalism.
Yeah. You know what makes me safe and warm inside? Cryptic crosswords and cannibalism. I can't wait.
Perfect. Cool. Well, this has been fun.
It has.
And we'll leave it there, I reckon. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.